Hello folks, Dave Schmidt here. It's the morning of October 4th as I'm doing this recording. Wednesday night, a couple days ago, we were supposed to give an update on the currency exchange situation. And also I was going to have Robert Dunlap on as my guest. Well, those are two entirely separate issues, and Robert's schedule is extremely busy. So here I'm going to give the update as a separate recording on what's happening on the currency exchange scenario. Now, many of you know that this started many years ago, and it's been developing, but everything I consistently hear from all of my sources is that everything is ready to go. They're just waiting for the top decision makers to make the decision on releasing the funds. But let me give a little bit of a background. First of all, there are 4 different levels of organizations or individuals involved in this process. It first starts with you, the ones who have the currency, who are selling it. And then what happens is someone like myself, I'm called an aggregator. I aggregate currencies from large numbers of people, and then I take those, and as a single client, I turn them into a broker. And then the broker then works with the buyer, the one who has the money. In this process, because I'm public, I come out here, I have radio programs, I put videos out, and I talk about this, is that I've just had numbers of different individuals contact me. Other aggregators, other brokers, and even a few of the buyers have contacted me, so I get large sources of information, and I'm able to basically find what is valid, what is real, and some of those that are not. In this process, more than once I've had contracts with brokers that I found out did not have a legitimate contract with a buyer. Fortunately, at some of those times I had not collected any currency, so basically I just broke away my contracts with them and I moved on. There was one situation where I had turned it in. I found out that that the buyer was not a legitimate buyer, and the broker himself had some issues going on, so I retrieved all the currencies and turned them back to everybody. I'm in a situation right now with the dong, and I'm speaking about the dong that I collect, that is the most absolute legitimate broker and buyer I've been able to find that's out there. They have legitimate contracts. They are involved with multi-country contracts. They are involved in contracts with the U.S. Treasury where it has been approved by them. They have told me themselves they have seen the bank accounts. They're in a very large bank in Hong Kong, and the funds are there and ready to be paid out. Now, I've talked about the sources of those funds in other videos and at the workshops, and they're basically the primary sources of the funds. They come out of Asia, primarily from the dragon families, but there's some other means about how they develop those funds as well. I've worked very hard to make sure that all of this is legitimate. This is not just something that we're going to be hoping is going to happen. What I have been told from my broker, and I've mentioned to you, I don't want to mention the name over the air, but it's basically a New Zealand-based bank. They are the ones that work directly with the buyers, and they have given multiple reports saying that everything is done. It's always been a safety and security issue that's been holding this up. But they said everything is now done, and they're basically waiting for the top decision makers to release the funds. Now, those decision makers are what I have been told are basically the 3 largest political leaders in the world. President Trump here in the United States, President Putin of China, and President Putin of Russia, and President Xi of China. And in some of my recent meetings with some very high contacts, I should say sources, they've also said there's a 4th individual that's involved, and they won't even tell me who that is. But even if I did, that's a confidential information. A lot of this information is private and confidential. It's also parts of non-disclosures, and that's why they cannot give me details, and that's why I cannot go into details with you. But here's what I know. For those of you who have already turned in dong to me, and that was a very limited number of people, because remember folks, I have about 6,000 to 8,000 people on my list, and it's only been a few hundred that have turned them in. And when I collected those, I did what I said I would always do. I was very consistent. When I was told by the broker there was an opportunity to turn in currency, I always turn to my most recent attended workshop, because I have no idea when this is going to happen. Don't ask me to take your currencies. Right now, I have no brokers or buyers who are contacting me and are collecting it, and I will not take any currencies until I know I have something that is legitimate with a legitimate broker and buyer. When that happened, we did do that. We collected from a few hundred people, and those are the people that I'm referring to now about the dong. And everything I'm hearing from my broker is the fact that we're just waiting. We're waiting for those top political decision makers, because you are involved with literally thousands of other people from around the world that are going to have funds released to them. And the amount of money being released, this impacts what is called global economics and finances and global politics. So that's why those decision makers are the ones that are doing that. So that's basically all I can say right now is we're waiting. We're waiting for the very top decision makers. Now, let me refer to the ZIM. It's important to know that everything I have been told is ZIM was a limited currency for a limited period of time. There are very limited buyers of the ZIMs. Whatever you're reading on all those blog sites, in my opinion, folks, forget it. None of them have legitimate buyers. And they will never address the question of who's paying for this. Where is this money coming from? They're talking about that you're going to get an 800 number and be able to take your ZIM into these processing centers. And there's over 5,000 processing centers out there. So where are these 50,000 employees, meaning 10 employees at each one of these processing centers, that they've said that have been on wait for close to 2 to 3 years? Who's paying for all their time? They're just sitting there waiting. You see, it's common sense stuff, folks. The ZIM buyers, as I said, were very, very limited. And I was able to be contacted by what I thought was a legitimate individual, I should say group, that said they had contacts with a legitimate buyer of the ZIM. Now, this happened a little bit about a year and a half ago, and again, what I did, I turned it to my most recent attended workshops. And most of you know who that is, and I'm going to be very honest, and I am going to say who contacted me. It was basically the M's, Matthew and Megan, along with They Have Gone Public, and it was their partner, Mark Staffelli. Matthew and Mark said they had a legitimate buyer for the ZIM, so we trusted them. And then also Mark had a valid, what was called contact with the broker that I was working with. So I collected ZIM from you. I turned it over to my broker, who went through Mark Staffelli to the buyer that was here in South Florida. Well, what we found out later is that buyer was not a really legitimate buyer. He ended up backing out because the contract didn't come out as he had anticipated. So where are we now? That means all of your ZIM is basically sitting here in a vault in South Florida with the broker. Now, you aren't the only ones. Again, I only had a few hundred people there, but this broker basically has thousands of people that are underneath him that are in the same position as you. We are waiting for some new scenarios to develop with some potential new contracts. And if that doesn't happen, we will, myself, and there are others, some of the very large aggregators like myself, we will do what we need to do to reacquire the ZIM. Right now, myself and the others, we feel it is not in your best interest to do that, because there is legitimate opportunities to be able to get this somewhere else. And that's all that I can say on that. So folks, you can know the fact that your ZIM is sitting in a very safe and secure place here in Southern Florida. Myself and other aggregators of myself, we are working with this large broker, and there is a potential of acquiring another buyer. I am not collecting anymore. I do not want anymore. I do not take anything until I feel I have good information. Now, obviously, this one, it wasn't just me. Again, there was about 4 or 5 other aggregators like myself. We should have done a better job of really making sure that the buyer was a true legitimate buyer. This buyer had the funds, but what we found out is what his conditions were. They ended up not panning out, and so that's why he backed out. That's where we are now with these currency situations of what's involved. And when it comes to the dong, nobody is leaking any information about the probability on the time on that. All we know is that everything we have with legitimate contracts with banks, legitimate contracts with brokers, legitimate contracts with buyers that are involved in contracts between different governments, and also with the U.S. Treasury, all of that, what we are told is very strong, legitimate. We're just waiting for the right opportunity. So that's the update that I can give you on the currency exchanges. It basically means we're waiting, folks. Okay? Thank you. I hope that is helpful and appreciate all of your support. All right. Thanks a lot. Okay. Bye-bye.